Wow. It doesn't even feel like a work day today.
It isn't. Happy Easter, guys.
Happy Easter.
Why?
We film this podcast on Monday nights so we can have them ready for you guys on Wednesdays. Yeah. So we're still on vacation right now.
Yeah. So we've been chilling all weekend and just not been thinking about anything, basically.
Yeah, been super nice.
It's been. How was your Easter? Was it good? Let us know, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, Easter in Sweden, they eat the same holiday food as all the other holidays. It seems like really good. Had
One thing that was different for me in Texas was the Easter egg hunting part. Because in Texas, there were like 100 small eggs. With little pieces of candy. But in here, there's like one big egg that you find, right?
Okay.
So that was the only difference that I noticed.
I seen those people at the grocery stores in Sweden with the giant Easter eggs. I guess that's
bigger.
what it's for.
We
were always hiding. There was one year we had an Easter egg hunt out in the yard. My mom put this really good chocolate in all the Easter eggs, and all the kids we were told we had to wait till after dinner to go on the Easter egg hunt. We were all super excited and wanted to go on this Easter egg hunt, but the squirrels that year figured out how to chew and get into the eggs and get all the chocolate. So by the time the kids were allowed to go on the Easter egg hunt, we were all excited for the chocolate, and the squirrels had already wiped out.
Childhood ruined.
Literally all the Easter eggs. So, that was a bit traumatic. Now, when we go home for Easter, it's like my mom's trying to stir up some fun, ruffle up some fun with the adult children. Yeah. And we're like I put $20 in one of the eggs. I'm like shit. Nice try, Mom.
I put whiskey in one of the eggs. Oh damn.
Yeah. My brother's ears perked up.
He's like, oh god. Yeah. Mom, where is it?
Yeah. But let's move on to today's topic. I thought we want to keep talking about things that are a little bit maybe controversial in the differences and things. And I was thinking about one thing that's sort of different and has really affected life in America that I'm thinking, and you probably know a lot more about the Swedish aspect, is like the news media.
The media. Da-da-da-da.
Yeah, I mean, in the U.S., the news media, I mean, in the words of Donald Trump, like fake news, it really is like, there is a very like twisted spin depending on which media outlets you watch in the U.S. Yeah. So if you turn on Fox News, it's going to be very, very conservative leaning with all the talking points. And then you turn on CNN or MSNBC and you get the complete opposite of that. So you can literally have an event happen, and depending on what channel you're watching, you get a completely different side of the story.
Yeah, that was really like something that I absolutely noticed in America was really polarized was what part of the media that you were watching, basically. So, like, watching Fox News talk about something and watching CNN talk about something, it's completely different things. It might be the same event, but, like, you don't know if it's the same news because you're, like, they're saying something completely else. Yeah. Just following along the election now in 2020, it was like I was following CNN and Fox, and CNN was announcing it, like, way before Fox when it was finished, because Fox was like really weary about actually announcing that Biden won, and CNN was like really early on it because obviously they really wanted it to happen. And I don't know, to me it was really strange how it was that oblivious how different the two sides of the media was, how angled it actually was.
Definitely. I think if you ever seen, there's this documentary on Netflix, The Social Dilemma. And it was talking about how people, the algorithms with all these social media sites, when they start to view one type of content, even the algorithms on the social media will start to blast them with similar content that's going to provoke those reactions, that engagement from those people. So you ultimately you wind up being in this sort of bubble where all the news that you listen to is slanted towards your direction, and all the social media that you're interacting with is slanted in a certain direction. And it really warps your view of the world in a very, very one-sided way. And I think everybody is sort of victim to this. And I do my best to try to counteract this. And sometimes I'll just like pull up some Fox News videos on YouTube just to try to see, okay, what does the other side think about this? And now like YouTube's recommending me Fox News videos because I watched a few videos. And it's just crazy because like the more you watch it,
that basically.
It just feeds into this cycle. And like I always try to stay in the middle. And I think it's actually very, very interesting because like when I was in the US, I found that I was always like very liberal, like Democrat leaning. I was always more liberal than like the average American. But now coming to Sweden, where it seems like everything is a little bit more already in that direction, I start to resort a little bit back to my roots and playing the devil's advocate a lot of times and I end up being a little bit more conservative here in Sweden because I guess I'm always trying to find that balance. And anytime I'm in an environment that seems like it's skewed in one direction, I'm always in the back of my mind trying to play like devil's advocate for the other side to try to like balance it out.
Yeah, I get that. I think I try to do the same thing a lot of times, just to like understand the other side and just really just by understanding why a person thinks a certain way, I think can gain and really be good for you in an argument. Just trying to understand why they think the way that they are is definitely gonna be a way for you to be either convinced more of your own thing or to like really understand. All right, maybe that is a thing, but. Do you actually watch any Swedish news media outlets?
I don't really watch a lot of Swedish news, so that's why I wanted to ask you, like, what is it like in terms of Sweden? Because we have very obvious two sides in the U.S., and what is that like in Sweden?
Well, I wouldn't say that there are obvious two sides actually, because not as CNN and Fox, because Fox is really a big news channel in the U.S., and I think here in Sweden. We don't really have an equivalent to Fox because a news outlet like that is not really like serious in our general point of view. I would say we had a few outlets called like Avpixlat, which is now Samnytt, which I was actually looking at a few weeks ago out of curiosity, and I felt the same feelings as when I watch Fox News. Like, is this a joke? Basically, like, are they like? Can they not understand like how they're like 100% angling everything so much towards a right like mindset? But I wouldn't say that's a big media news outlet. I would say that the biggest ones, the biggest players in Sweden with like just checking the media on your phone is Aftonbladet and DN, Dagens Nyheter, the daily news, and they're also big in print media.
What about like TV though? You got TV4.
Yeah, you got TV4 news, which is really big, obviously, and then the state-run news, which is TV1 or SVT. SVT, and I've heard a lot of different opinions about SVT and TV4 and the different angles on the news. I kind of like the state-run news because it gives me a big like overall view of what's happening. And I don't feel like they're too angled, but I can definitely see how they, in some cases, are. I'm not at all very well read up on it, but I can understand, like, they really, when it comes to, like, more sensitive topics as immigration or such, they can be sort of angled, like, well, of course, like, you know, we don't sympathize with SD on this matter because you know, obviously we don't, because that's not something that you do, which I feel like as someone who sympathizes with SD, not me, but someone that does, I could definitely see how that would be offensive.
Do you think there's like certain views in Sweden that are just like you would socially isolate yourself if you were to like go along with it? Like, do you think there's a lot of people in Sweden that would be like afraid to say what they truly think because the vast majority of people in Sweden hold a certain type of view that is different than what they believe?
I do believe 100% that people that do sympathize with SD do really hesitate to say that in larger groups, because the general point of view is like you don't do that basically. It's still like 16, 17, 18% of the voting people have voted for them. So I mean, these people are everywhere. But I mean, I feel like, I think like most people know someone that sympathizes with SD, but there should be like 1 in 5 people, basically 1 in 5 or 6 people.
And for people that don't know SD, it's like the anti-immigration party in Sweden, right? Just to clarify that. But it's interesting because like in Swedish culture, it seems like people really don't want to have conflict. Like I was just speaking to somebody who lived in Germany for some time not long ago, and they were saying that Germans are like super direct people, right? They're just straight to the point, get it out there. They're like
I can see that.
force. And I was like, aren't Swedes like a little bit like to the point too? And this was a Swedish person. And they're like, not at all. Swedish people are like, they avoid conflict at all costs. They like work around the issue. It's the same thing like when you call, like if you have a problem with a product or something and you call the customer service in Sweden they might know how to fix the problem, but they don't want to be held liable if they're wrong, so they send you to the next person and the next person, so you're talking to like 6 different people, and then finally you get sent back to the first person, and then they tell you what to do. It's like, because nobody wants to be the one that tells you what and how to do it, which is sort of crazy. So I think a lot of that kind of ties into Swedish society, that you sort of have this like in terms of like news and like political beliefs, you have this like almost dominant way of thinking about it, and if there's a Swedish person that doesn't really see it that way, they do sort of maybe repress those views.
No, definitely. And I think that you don't want to have to argue for your side too much. Like if it's a perception or an opinion that is widely accepted, then I think you will have no problem in just letting it out there. But I mean, a thing as sympathizing with SD is not generally accepted, so it's going to be something that if you choose to share it with people that you know but not 100%, you're going to have to argue for your cause. And I think that's really good, because it's really good to be able to argue for like what you believe in, and especially in bigger problems and bigger questions like political questions and like SD. But then again, like you can definitely see how, you know, the media that sympathizes with them, so let's say Samnytt, right? They are very like angled in their favor, obviously. And you can also in the same way tell that Aftonbladet, DN and all these, the undertone is also angled against them, so to speak.
Well, you were telling me an interesting story about when you were back visiting in Texas, which reminded me a lot of some experiences that I'd had starting a YouTube channel. Well, why don't you just tell them a little bit about that?
So this was actually, I was back visiting in Texas like 2 years after I moved back from there. And I was at a party, and this guy was like, "Oh yeah, you're that guy from Sweden, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah, dude, like what's up?" And he was like, "Yeah, dude, like I'm a political science major. I just want to tell you, like, I'm sorry for what's going on over there." And I'm like, "Thanks, but like, what do you mean?" Yeah, like, well, what is happening? Like, what are you referring to? You know? And this was back when Trump was saying like, "Did you see what happened in Sweden last night in Sweden?" When he was doing all that, and this guy was like literally referring to that and was like, "Yeah, I looked into it, and like, you know, with years and years of immigration and the people from Syria, and like how it's just chaos in Stockholm, and like cars are burning, and like, you know, women can't walk like home late at night because of the immigrants." And I'm like, dude, like, I appreciate your concern, but like, this is not a thing.
I was in Stockholm a week ago.
I was in Stockholm like 4 days ago, and it was fine. I didn't see any cars burning. There definitely are a few cars burning, but it's not this huge societal problem whereas you go to a Swedish person and tell them you're sorry for what's happening. Like, but the thing is, this guy wouldn't stop. He was like, but you know, I understand the whole denial part, you know, and you're like, you're wrapped up in it, so you don't want to admit it, but like, I get it. And I'm like, dude, you don't get it. Like, this is not a thing. Like, stop. He goes, "Yeah, I like you talk back to me. I like that. But you know, I know my shit. Like, you know, I follow the media, and like I see what's going on. So I just want to say I'm sorry." And I'm like, dude, stop. Like, I was there like a few days ago. It's not a problem. Let's not talk about this. Like,
it's so great.
He was so convinced, and I was like, I'm from there. Like, I was there literally 2 days ago. You know?
And I had the exact same thing when I moved to Sweden, and I was just reflecting on my experience moving here on my YouTube channel, and I was getting comments like talking bad about me and Sweden in the comment section, saying, "Oh, like Sweden's turning into a hellhole, and
really,
you know, everything's don't believe anything this guy says, blah blah blah." And I'm like, hey, it's completely like fine, like from my perspective, like I get like maybe some things have changed due to taking in a large number of people from a different part of the world. Like, there are going to be like things going on. I think that's
in certain
okay
parts,
to acknowledge, but like at the same time, like Sweden is an amazing place. I've always felt like safe here. I think people get wrapped up into this bubble, and it was always like towards the beginning of my YouTube channel, because YouTube would just recommend my videos out to anybody that was interested in Sweden. And I would get a lot of this like negative reaction from these like, I think, super conservative, maybe like SD people or super conservative people in the US that live inside this bubble, and it warps their view of reality. And I don't think like us on the other side of the spectrum can say, oh, everything's great and everything's fine. And like, I think we need to think critically, because I think the truth is always somewhere in the middle.
But to me, it was just, I just couldn't fathom, like I was standing in front of this guy, and I'm like, I'm from there. I am from Stockholm. I'm Swedish, and I'm telling you firsthand experience. Yeah. But he was still convinced that the media was right and I was wrong. Yeah. And I'm like, I don't know what it would take for this guy to believe what I'm saying, because I'm actually from there. Like I've seen it firsthand. Like I know what you're talking about, and it's not this big of a problem. Like when Fox News is telling you like cars are burning left and right every night, and you know people are living in fear and terror, and you know it's a huge crisis. It's not true. Like I know that because I live there. So you need to listen to what I'm saying. And he was so convinced that the media was right and I was wrong.
Here's one thing about the news media. The news media does a really strong job of focusing on the negative things and magnifying it, because that's what sells. That's what sells the advertisements. That's what drives the traffic. People reacting to this negative news. So, you know, you see all of that they're going to highlight all of those negatives on that side. But then, again, the super, super liberal media would blow, like when we had Trump as our president, blow everything, blow up everything that Trump did in a very, very negative light. And I think Trump probably did some really good things, but we would never admit that or never highlight that on the liberal side of the media, right? And of course, the opposite side of the aisle and the opposite media outlets would highlight all of the positive things that he did during his presidency. So, you know, I'm friends with people who were Trump voters, and I personally am not a Trump voter. I have many friends, not just a few friends. Same. I mean, it was like half
all my friends from Texas.
Half of the country were Trump voters, and they react to the media that they consume, and I react to the media that I consume. And that's why I try to see both sides, because I want to see where they're coming from. And he probably did do some good things. I don't think he was the best fit as our president.
I remember after like the inaugural speech, I remember CNN saying like, it wasn't all bad, you know, like it was like there was no scandals, like it was a normal speech. Wow, good job, Trump. Like, but making the mock out of it instead. And I don't know. At that point, I just felt like, you know, he is the president now, and I mean, we all have our feelings about it. I mean, there's no way of like, there's no point in going into the whole Trump discussion. But I think that with media, with CNN and Fox News and all that in America, has really had like this huge social experiment the last couple of years. We really see, and just discrediting the news as Trump did. We can just we've seen the consequences of that, and Capitol riots and all this. How dangerous it is, and also how dangerous it is for someone to just believe in what a media outlet is saying and just believing in that bluntly. You know. So
how do you combat the issue? Like, how do you like avoid getting caught up in this trap of like only seeing one side?
How do you find the right? I remember in the U.S. history class in Texas. This is a really good thing, a really good exercise. They gave us like one piece of document from the Soviet media and one piece of document from the American media, talking about the Marshall Plan, which was in like the 1950s. President Marshall, whatever, he like initiated a plan to like rebuild Europe, because Europe was war torn and like the cities were burned in the ground. So he was like, how do we reinvest in Europe? Because the quicker that Europe is back to normal, the better for our trade and like everything. And so the American media was saying like, we need to help these poor people. Like the cities are burned in the ground. It's our moral obligation and responsibility to do this. And in the Soviet media, it was like, it was like the Americans are buying cities in Europe, and they're coming with their money and rebuilding the cities. So they like basically they're gaining ground in Europe, close to the Soviet, and they're doing this only to manipulate Europe, who are now really war torn. This is bad news. Blah blah blah. And it was like this two completely different sides of the same thing.
Yeah.
And depending on who you were fed, the Soviet media in Soviet and in the US. The U.S. media, and so they have like completely different ideas of what is happening, which is so interesting. It's like when they go back to being kids, like and there's a rumor being spread, like you said that about him. No, I didn't say that. You said that about. It's like the same thing. It's like everyone has different information that they act upon emotionally.
Exactly, and when you're inundated, when you have all this stuff around you all the time, like of course you're gonna believe that. Like there's been times where I had a belief that somebody would challenge me on, and they'd say, oh, you need to do more research. You need to do more research. And I'm like, maybe the research I'm doing is just fundamentally very different than the research that you're doing. Like maybe, maybe we should both try to look at both sides and find some common ground and find some places where we can like have an agreement.
But it is hard when like to boil it down to like, all right, how do you find the perfect middle ground? How do you find what's right and what's wrong? And I think that a lot of times comes down to like who you are as a person, what you believe is right. As long as you can motivate why you believe it's right, then I think the expression agree to disagree comes in hand. Because like if you and me are arguing about something and we just break it down, and then I just feel like but I agree with this side and you agree with that side, let's agree to disagree.
Exactly.
It's just saying like this is right and you are wrong. It's like, well, but I mean, I don't know.
and I have friends that have completely different political beliefs than me, and that's not going to stop me from being friends with them. Because we were all raised in different environments, we have different backgrounds, and I am sort of a centrist, so I am not the kind of guy that's going to be extreme on the logom guy. But sometimes I feel like I am a bit more on the conservative end in Sweden. And I find myself really, being more vocal and stimulating discussion with Swedish people. Like, why do you see it that way? Have you ever considered it like this? Have you ever considered it like that? And I think it's interesting because I think Swedish people, they don't necessarily get challenged in that way as often, but because I'm not from here, like it's almost more acceptable for me to be disagreeable because I'm not, like, it's easier to stand out if you have that different background. Like it's sort of interesting. I was thinking about like my friend Max, for example, he's got 2 Swedish parents, but he grew up in Canada for the first 11 years of his life, so he speaks perfect English, right, without an accent at all. And he speaks Swedish too, right? So
without an accent.
Yeah, exactly. So he's perfectly fluent in both, and he'll notice sometimes like if he's just speaking English about a certain thing, like people will like kind of give him special treatment, and then like if he speaks Swedish, he kind of gets worse treatment. And I'm like, wait, we're in Sweden. I even had that like at a club or something, and I was like dancing on a table or something that I shouldn't have been doing. And a Swedish guy would come up to me, like I'm thinking like way back when we used to be able to come to the clubs, and he would say something to me in this loud crowded room I didn't really understand, so I'd like answer him in English, and he was like really angry. And the minute I spoke English, he was like, "Oh, you're American," and then it was all fine that I was like not following the rules. And come on down, let's talk about America. Blah blah blah. I was like, what the heck? Like, why?
That's great.
Why am I getting special treatment in a country that's not my country? And I'm getting special treatment for the fact that I'm not from here? He's like, that's got to be really weird. Like, this has got to be one of the few countries on earth where the foreigners get better treatment than the actual people that live here.
But a lot of times, like, just speaking English, like to me as well, speaking English in Sweden instead of Swedish, you definitely get like a different reaction. You get more noticeable, and people like put more of an effort into what they want to reply, basically, because I guess it's sort of special. I guess I don't know. It's definitely interesting how that works, and I mean definitely that. At the club, having someone really mad, and what up, bro? What do you think? What do you say? Like, oh shit!
It was like 100% like that. And then I was like, I guess I'm off the hook now. Like,
Dude, that's
like, I would have listened, you know, even if I was a Swedish person. Of course, I would. Oh, I'm sorry. Like, I'll go. Like, whatever you need. Like, that's fine.
Obviously, yeah.
But I guess I had a higher level of ignorance, maybe.
Yeah.
Because
it's just American. It's fine.
Yeah, I don't know. It's probably a bad example, but I just thought I'd throw it in there. So.
But I don't know. It's really interesting. I saw this documentary. I don't remember what the name was, but basically they were investigating like why guns is such a big problem in the United States and why, you know, people lock their doors and like the murder rates are really high. And then as opposed to Canada where they like sleep with their doors open basically. Well, that's what they said in the documentary. It's a lot more common and people are not as scared and weapons are really unusual. And I mean, the whole documentary started with this guy opening a bank account in Michigan, and the bank had like a campaign saying, if you open this bank account, we will give you like a gun. And he's like, wait, so if I opened it, like they knew this, but he was acting ignorant, and he's like, wait, so if I open this account, you will give me a free gun? They're like, yeah, you'll get a gun if you open it. And he's like, well, my first question is, why do you keep guns at a bank? Like, and then like it cut to the next scene, and his whole summary or in his conclusion was that the media in the U.S. as opposed to Canada was a big factor because like every other news is like, child in suburban Los Angeles shot in front of her mother while her dad was being tortured. Like, you know, it's really horrible news very often, and just like a lot of horror examples. And as you said, like the news media that just like spreads fear basically. So they were, according to them, a really big factor in why people were scared, and a lot of times like felt like they needed to have guns at home, and how that, you know, really increased the level of danger. And I found it really interesting, that conclusion really interesting, because the media, I think, is the cause of the societal, like how society is acting and how society, and a lot of times is like the whole just feeling in society. I think the media sets the tone for that.
Totally. I mean, the gun control issue is very, very interesting. We could probably do a whole episode on that. But I was just thinking, like, both sides of the media really do put a lot of emphasis on the fear aspect of that issue. Like, for example, like the pro-gun side in the U.S. is like making arguments like, oh, you need to have the gun to defend yourself, to stand up to a potential tyrannical government. I'm like, all right, the government's got like stealth bombers. You think you're gonna be all right with your like single shot rifle? You know,
that's number one.
Or, you know, maybe, you got to protect your property from wild animals. I'm like, oh, okay, like maybe. And then, you know, I was in a Fox News video that I was watching. It was like, oh, okay, well, it's guns don't kill people. People kill people. We have a mental health problem. Yeah, that's probably true. Like I could maybe see that side, but like still like less gun violence. Like I could obviously see that correlation as well. But like, they've got a point. We should probably work on like the mental health aspects as well. Like I think it's probably a middle ground with like a little bit more common sense gun laws, but at the same time, like one side's afraid, like, oh, if they take this initial step to restrict it, then they're gonna go after the next thing and the next step, and they play on that fear, like, oh, Obama's gonna take all your guns, or
this is just the beginning.
This is just the beginning, exactly, and
he did this some like city hall questioning blah 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 Obama at this one point, and this guy was asking him, was like, like why do you hate guns or whatever, and he was like, first of all, like I never ever said that I'm going to take anyone's guns. Exactly. I don't want to take anyone's guns.
No, and that's the media on one side spreading fear.
And he's like, I just think that, you know, if you have a history of mental illness and you have a previous record of being like a criminal, then you shouldn't be able to get a gun, because then you are a danger.
Most people would be able to agree on that.
Makes sense.
But when we get into this society that gets so divided, it's very, very difficult to make progress. And that's one of the things that I hate the most about politics. And that's why I think
you're never getting into it.
I think I'm happier when I just don't watch the news on either side. But yeah, guys, I think this is a very, very interesting topic. I think, again, this is a topic we could go on a lot more in depth.
Now, the media is a really wide topic, and again, I'm no expert on Swedish media outlets. Like, if you have any inputs to make, please. I mean, you're really good at commenting, so keep doing that. Educate us, and we might do a follow up on this one as well. But the media is a really wide and interesting discussion.
Let us know what you're curious about. I'm very curious to see the comments on this, and maybe we can elaborate in a future episode. But in the sake of keeping this one under 30 minutes,
we got about 12 more seconds to go.
12 more seconds. So we're going to say thanks for watching in this one. We'll see you next week.
See you next week. Bye, guys.